Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today we're going to be analyzing the Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker launch trailer. Spoiler warning, of course, if you haven't seen the launch trailer or didn't want to see it before Endwalker actually released, well, you kind of got to look at it in order to do this video, so consider this your spoiler warning so you can see yourself exit stage left. Format for the video will be simple. We will watch a little bit of the trailer, I'll break down what I think is happening with a little bit of speculation mixed in, and then we'll watch the next section. I'll try to remember to include chapters for the YouTube video itself based on what I'm actually talking about in any given part. With that, let's get started.
And so you venture forth unto the unknown. A fate beyond the horizon that cannot be divined. A future undefined and in flux.
Have a safe journey, and please, be careful.
So for our first section here, we have all of the Scions, as well as many workers around Limsa waiting at the docks for a ship to appear. This is going to be taking us to one of two locations, either Sharlayan or Thavnair. And based on my experiences in the media tour and the level range of the enemies there, I'm going to assume that it's actually Thavnair. At the end of this waiting, right before we ship off and move on into the next scenes, we have Tadaru wishing us a safe journey and to be careful. And if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. Finally, we have a narrator for the trailer who will be with us throughout the entire thing, in that of Emmett Selk. Now, the lines that he's speaking are brand new, and so you venture forth unto the unknown, a fate beyond the horizon that cannot be divined, a future undefined and in flux. Now, these are talking about our current adventure, and as such, I wonder if Emmett Selk is going to be our zone-to-zone narrator that we get whenever we go into a new area. This is something they've been doing for several expansions now, and we've gone through many different voices up to this point. I just want Emmett to be able to join us for one last adventure, and I do hope that beyond his narration, we get a little bit more of an homage or an appearance from him, and I think that might be the case when we look at some later parts in this trailer.
Which lives is destined to die. Love leads to loss. Every beginning has an end. Treasure every moment, every step of your descent. And there, in the depths where souls and stars rest, find your truth.
Now, Emmett's narration continues. That which lives is destined to die. Love leads to loss. Every beginning has an end. Treasure every moment, every step of your descent. And there, in the depths where the souls and stars rest, find your truth. Again, very foreboding and very much in the theme of this being the finale of the Hydaelyn and Zodiark storyline. Everything is laid to bear here, and there will be no more secrets, at least not until the future in 6.1 and beyond. Now, under Emmett's narration are a couple of different scenes. The first one are scenes of Amarot's final days, something we've seen several times over at this point, but the ancients are more clearly defined here. As opposed to being more ghostly images like we saw in Emmett's Amarot, these ones have hair and clothes closer to the texture and consistency of the rest of the game's palette. That also makes them stand out from Xenos' dreams of these, so I wonder if we're seeing a more real-time explanation of what happened, especially when we look at some of the later scenes that happen in this launch trailer. We also do see Thavnair being descended upon, and this is a scene we'll see plenty of times throughout the launch trailer. Now, before it moves on into the next sections of the launch trailer, we get a shot of the Warrior of Light looking out on that ship from Limsa as the camera pans down into the ocean and then goes into the launch text. The ocean ahead of the ship is pitch black, and I don't think that's just because it's night. I think that is symbolic of the dangers that are actually ahead, and a symbol of Emmett's undefined future that he's talking about in this moment. And it's also likely just a parallel to the state of the world, one where even the ship fades to black as the camera pans away and goes under the ocean.
Maybe we don't belong here, but neither do they. Not out here in the wind and the cold.
Now we get a quick scene of the Tower of Zot dungeon before a wide shot of Garlemald at the base of the Gateway to the Gods appears. Alphino and Alisaie stand together and then eventually end up cuddling together in order to share each other's warmth in the underground train station in Garlemald. We were able to visit that location in the media tour, and it was very foreboding. No background music at all during that little section, and I can't help but wonder if that was deliberate. This may be the last bastion of the Garleans who are not actually part of Xenos' plan or haven't fallen under his influence. We do also see a young pureblood Garlean with soldiers at his rear charging at a group of heroes made up of Lucia, Maxima, Cyrena, and Sadu, as well as a few different Alliance members. Alphino is also speaking over this. Maybe we don't belong here, but neither do they, not out here in the wind and the cold. Likely talking about Garleans that they're actually aiding, which is against years and years and years of sensibilities that we have, but Alphino sees them as equals, as victims of what is happening, and he doesn't want to abandon them.
That blue will be your guide, test and proof of your conviction. In darkness, seek joy. Walk free and bear the light for others to follow.
Now this next section here, there's one word that I'm missing from the narration. Here we have the Lady of Light, currently speculated to actually be Venat, very much along the same vein of Elidibus removing himself from Zodiark's heart when the time was necessary. Many of us suspect that Venat has done the same, removing herself from Heidelin's heart, that she might assist the end of days and make sure that it doesn't actually come to fruition. Now she says something here, and the second word that she says, I'm not 100% sure what it was. I thought it said that glow will be your guide, and then she says test and proof of your conviction, in darkness seek joy, walk free, and bear the light for others to follow. Now glow kind of makes sense, but the flower that the Warrior of Light is actually holding here may imply that she's saying bloom or something along those lines. That implies that that flower has some form of significance, that it's a representation of the Warrior of Light's struggle and their ether and their state of mind, almost like a mood ring of sorts. Test and proof of your conviction, again, without knowing what the second word is, it's really hard to determine unless that flower theory ends up coming to pass. In darkness, seek joy is particularly interesting. It seems to suggest that she doesn't want us to be afraid of the darkness, to overcome the darkness. It's kind of like she understands there's a sense of equilibrium. We just need to be able to walk through it and be a shining light in the darkness itself. Walk free and bear the light for others to follow, to guide them through that darkness. Don't let anyone else be afraid of it either. Now, some of the scenes that are happening under her narration, we've already mentioned. She's staring out over on the side of the ship as the Warrior of Light approaches her. Cuts to him looking at that flower that we were speculating on. We also see more of the Tower of Zot dungeon. Then it also cuts to another dungeon made up entirely of crystal. Now there's so many possibilities about what this thing could be. Given its nature and its kind of similarity to the color scheme we see used in Heidelin's crystal, something like the Path to the Heart of Heidelin, which don't forget is the entirety of the Source's planet. Could be the Heart of Zodiark, but it seems like it's a little too bright for that. It could also just be a crystal entity that is close to the Lifestream itself, not too unlike the Anti-Tower, or it could be some other unknown entity, something we'll experience in the later acts of the story that we really just can't know without having all of the context. But we do know it's a dungeon because you can see the 3 Trust NPCs following behind the Warrior of Light as they run forward in that classic, almost triangle formation that they normally do. Then we do see the Lady of Light looking at the warrior before a cut to the Forum and Faucheneau standing in front of just a number of citizens, it looks like. I wonder if this is them kind of formally declaring what their station is in regards to the end of the world. Could be them coming around and participating in it for the first time, but I'm not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that that's going to happen oh so smoothly. We also see a cut to the Warrior of Light fighting against Anima. We do see the ultimate attack as it begins, and then they cut away. Please look forward to Endwalker.
Leave you of your burden. You've suffered enough.
The sky burns. The final days are truly upon us.
Now here we hear an unknown voice. Come, let me relieve you of your burden. You've suffered enough. It sounds young, very, very high pitched. It's hard to tell if it's just a woman with a higher pitched voice or if it's actually a younger child in some capacity, which could happen in any number of ways. Could even be a Garlean child for all we know. Now, that unknown female voice speaks out to the Warrior of Light as they clutch the Stone of Azim, the convocation seat that we currently hold ever since the events of 5.3, even if the convocation itself doesn't really matter that much anymore. The area, however, looks dark and full of ether, possibly another stretch of the previous Crystal Dungeon, or a dungeon or zone on the moon, maybe something closer to the heart of Zodiark. That only continues when it cuts to another scene in a similar area. A Reaper LB3 on a random mob, I believe it is, but in the back we spot a ship in a sea of death and several floating dark spheres closer to the ground. The terrain is rocky and jagged, with the sky possessing these dark clouds and these streaks of darkness throughout, almost as if reality is crumbling. It looks like the sky is broken and darkness is seeping in, which is why I can't help but feel like this is a dungeon that's actually on the moon, something much closer to Zodiark itself, or whatever the finale is going to be. This just feels like something closer to the end of our level 80 to 90 stretch. Now Alisaie steps in, the sky burns, the final days are truly upon us. Alisaie looks up at the sky before a cut to a shot of the moon in that sky. Now the skies here do look slightly different, so these may be two scenes being melded together in some capacity. The scene from the first one, while similar to the scene with the moon, reminds me more of that sky without it being broken, the one that we saw in the previous section where those dark streaks were all throughout it. Alisaie clutches her fist, very Alisaie thing to do.
Bereft of hope, and now dignity. 'Twas a grand, glorious dream we shared.
I won't lose them! Not a one!
But are we truly so powerless that our only choice is to flee?
We've come too far to back down now.
But then it continues with the Thavnair scene. Beasts are ravenously attacking people residing in small villages and homes throughout the island. We see Humbabas, wolves, void squid ladies, armored demons, and horses. A cut to a scene that looks to be an outright nightmare occurs, full of creatures reminiscent of the first Doom from Amarot. Now we hear two voices here, and the first one I'm not really sure who it is. Bereft of hope and now dignity. 'Twas a grand, glorious dream we shared. Now that's a big question mark, because there's a lot of people who that could be. That could be a Garlean who has accepted that what they wanted is just not a reality anymore, was an absolute farce and is just beyond recognition from where it was. But then we cut to another voice that sounds like it's G'raha. He says, I won't lose them, not a one. It sounds a little bit off tone from G'raha, but given the intensity of the scenarios we'll see, I suspect that we probably haven't heard his full range of voice and all of his different emotions. Now we get a cut to a scene of someone wearing the Law's armor from Bozja. It looks like Nero based on the hairstyle, but for me, this doesn't make any sense. It's not his classic outfit. It's not red, which I don't think he would have. And I don't think he'd wear anything this gaudy. Whoever it is, it's staring at the Garlemald flag in some sort of boiler or control area. Lots of pipes and nozzles and things like that. Potentially participating in the invasion of Garlemald proper, one to, get to the gateway to the gods. And potentially inside of the gateway itself, inside of that giant tower. I'm not gonna lie, I get some kind of Yang flashbacks to Final Fantasy IV here, if you're catching my drift, but I don't think it's Nero. I think it makes much more sense that it be somebody else like Nerva, or I don't know. Wearing Bozja gear, Gabranth comes to mind, but we know what's going on with Gabranth. I don't think that's going to be the case. Besides, he's dead, right? So I don't know about this one, but I want to know more. And then more scenes from Thavnair. It seems just showing scenes from Thavnair are the most kind of spoiler-safe things they could have done, because we just see more of the kind of terminus beasts that are invading. Deformed creatures with long tongues, crawling bug-like creatures with tiny faces on the back. We see the warrior perform their level 90 skill on a Humbaba-looking mob, while the warrior of light paladin shifts to what looks like a more Garlean-looking dungeon, a collapsing building in the back, an oppressor-style machine, and a small sentry standing in the path. Now, the next two voices I think we can identify. The first one being Ali says, "Are we truly so powerless that our only choice is to flee?" The second voice, I'm not 100% sure. It kind of reminds me of Thancred, but again, much like the Graha one earlier, the tone may be a little off. It makes it not 100% certain that that's Thancred speaking the second time, so I'll reserve the judgment to be wrong on that one. Cut back to Thavnir, though, with a beast that is similar to the first Doom, but more snake-like with the ability to fly. The young Garlean also displays what looks to be fear or disappointment with that darkened sky in the back. It appears this creature is also a boss in a dungeon that looks to be taking place in Thavnir, one that they've teased in the past. Then we see a civilian surprise when an animus beast spawns right next to them and roars, potentially calling back to the true final days, where fears gave rise to powerful beasts. I wonder if that is truly manifesting on the star once again, as opposed to these towers just creating beasts with the creatures that are actually captured inside. Maybe it is unraveling, maybe the keening is actually happening again, and the fear that all these creatures are being born from is becoming real in everybody. Areas that were not looking like they were subject to the end of the world might just not have succumbed to this yet, and as soon as the keening happens, that sets everything off. That's a big speculation, because it's also very likely just the tower doing all this and nothing more fancy than that. Now, the next scene is a dungeon or maybe a solo instance. You see the Warrior of Light and Graha, but you also see some Garlean forces fighting some of the Telophoroi creatures in the background. So this was teased with the benchmark trailer, where we were actually fighting alongside a contingent of Garleans to, again, approach the gateway to the gods. That's why I think this is going to be a regularly occurring thing. That's why I think that young Garlean is probably not an enemy of ours, despite attacking Lucia and the crew initially in that earlier scene. Then we go back to Amarant, where an ancient is grabbed up by a Humbaba creature. And again, these are much more realistic looking ancients, so we're probably seeing something more direct in regards to the events that actually happen. Now they're not being disguised like all the Amarantians we've seen before, and ones we'll actually see in this trailer later. We also see the Lady of Light without her aura, the one that we've seen her with both in this trailer and in the game, walking through the streets and seeing destruction. It's eerily similar to the scene with Xenos doing the same thing. Similar head motions, similar looks on their faces. His a little more dead in the eyes, her a little more sad, but awkwardly eerie between the two. So, wondering if that has any relevance.
Wheresoever there is suffering and despair, you appear to fulfill your duty as defender of this star.
Then we see what looks to be the intro scene to that Great Crystal Path, probably what the dungeon intro to that will actually look like, very reminiscent of many Final Fantasy dungeons. An important thing to note, and this could just be for the sake of the trailer, but the entirety of your trust lineup is there with you. So if there are any unfortunate events, they are either going to happen after this dungeon, or this has been modified in some way and an event happened prior that got rid of one of them perhaps. We are expecting that maybe someone will bite the dust at some point, but they're all here right now, so hold fast for anyone looking to see what happens to our Scion buddies. The next scene is an interesting one. We have a scene of the Warrior of Light seemingly weakened, sitting upon the throne in what we can presume is the Gateway of the Gods, with Xenos standing over them. Now, if I had to make a guess, Xenos is going to use us as that final key in order to actually open the gateway that gets us to the moon. And then he's going to peace out and go there and start doing all his stuff, and we're going to have to find a way to follow him, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, it's kind of ominous. It's not the first time Xenos has looked at us and been like, yeah, I'm the one in control here. Now, Xenos does have a few words here, and really he just personifies the Warrior of Light. Wheresoever there is suffering and despair, you appear to fulfill your duty as defender of the star. Almost seeing as if he's mocking us for showing up. He knew we would come, and he knew that he would be able to get us into this position where he can now use us to complete his goals, so that way we can have that final grand conclusion. During his speech, it actually cuts away to a scene in that area where we saw the Reaper LB3 earlier, you know, with the sea in the back and the dark spheres and everything like that. And you can get a better look at that kind of dead sea that's behind the Warrior of Light and those dark orbs in that reality-shattered sky. There's another quick cut to Estinian riding Vritra into battle, much like the cinematic trailer. Again, I think this was a safe thing for them to do based on the cinematic trailer. The party is seen fighting this lich-like being as well, probably in a dungeon based on the boss gate in the back. And then Xenos just T-posing on us with both of his eyes going full resonant, so he's ready to go. Now, the last few scenes are ones that don't really make a whole lot of sense out of context, but really get the mind going. The Warrior of Light is now on the moon, before it flashes back to several iconic scenes from all the previous expansions. Now, this is something I'm wondering if they're just doing because, again, it's safe for the trailer to just play back all these events to remind us that it is the culmination of all of those things. Or if it's something that we are going to have to kind of see back and look through to get the answers to where we're going to go forward, almost like an echo flashback of ourselves, or somebody else having an echo flashback of us. Maybe even Xenos really looking into all of our adventures and what we've been through. But it looks like an echo dive or a flashback of some kind that is probably actually taking place as part of the story.
There must be a way to restore things to the way they were. To reclaim the perfect paradise we once had.
Now we get the last few lines of the trailer coming up in this final section. We have Fandaniel, there must be a way to restore things to the way they were, to reclaim the perfect paradise we once had. That is very unlike Fandaniel. He has said that he doesn't care about restoring that paradise and that he just wants to kill everyone. And I do think this is a major red herring. I don't think he's had a change of heart, a change of opinion, or anything of the sort. He's either saying this to appease somebody, particularly Zodiark, or his paradise is a different one, a time even before the Ancients, which it was only 12,000 years ago according to our lore. He may have been a remnant of another previous society and may have been responsible for the final days the first time around. So there's a lot of speculation behind what his paradise actually is, as opposed to what the Ascian paradise was, which was their original civilization.
It will be ours again! A world free of sorrow!
Let the curtains fall upon this, the final chapter in the tale of the stars.
And then we hear a voice that we don't know. It will be ours again, a world free of sorrow. Now, this is very deliberately vague. This is likely not some sort of accomplice or Ascian looking to return the world to paradise again. It could very likely be any character that we just don't know the voice of, that we haven't heard yet, saying that they want to save the world. They don't want the world to end. They're tired of all the wars, the calamities, everything. They just want it to be a safe, free of sorrow world. But we don't know, and we'll have to wait. Now, while we're hearing this, it returns to the shot on the moon, and we see a slew of the Amaradians hovering over the Warrior of Light. These are the Amaradians that we're used to seeing, the Ancients that look like shadows of their previous selves, the ones Emmett in particular would form with his memories, which is why I think that his narration voice is not the only time we're going to see him. These are just too reminiscent of those Ancients that we've seen before. We also see what is very likely Zodiark's physical form, sealed away in a barrier with him glowing red. It would make sense why Elidibus was always hanging out on the moon, and we kind of suspected that anyway, given we kind of know what the moon was made for in the first place. Fandaniel is standing there, gesturing seemingly to the statue. They like to red herring us. He might not be doing that in this particular scene, but he's up there and it's part of his plan, as if any of us are surprised by that. Now, another important scene, a cutaway to the masks of all the Amaradian souls, a callback to Emmett's final desperate attempt to slay the Warrior of Light. Again, I'm wondering if we're going to see Emmett in some capacity. We even see the same teleportation spell that Emmett cast to bring us back from the void being used by the Warrior of Light, seemingly in a void, to summon his allies to him or to get out of there himself. and then it cuts back to the Warrior of Light on the moon before zooming into a shot of Hydaelyn from the moon. I wonder if any of these are also from Pandemonium. Who knows? We still don't really know all the secrets behind that, but I wonder if they did include any scenes from the raid and we just didn't consider that. Worth thinking about. Oh, and with that, we get one final line, well, almost final line, from Emmett. Let the curtains fall upon this, the final chapter in the tale of this star. It is not the first time we've heard that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, those are the final lines in Shadowbringers, or at least one of the descriptions we were given of Endwalker from Yoshida and the crew themselves.
To have you at my side, it means more to me than you know. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Given what lies ahead, I did not wish to leave for later that which I could do today. After all, tomorrow is never promised.
Now, after the logo animates and plays out, the screen goes to black, but there's one last scene. They did this in the Shadowbringers trailer as well. They did it in the Stormblood trailer also. In fact, they pretty much just do it all the time. And this is a giant red flag. Alphino says, "Two of you at my side. It means more to me than you know. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Given what lies ahead, I did not wish to leave for later that which I could do today. After all, tomorrow is never promised." Thanks all his friends for what they've done, and it zooms into a shot of each of them, ending with the Warrior of Light. And if that doesn't look like a giant death flag for somebody, I don't know what is. Now, is this because something's going to happen specifically to Alphino? I don't know. I've had my theories about it, especially given the way a certain twin's fate unravels in Final Fantasy IV, but even then, I don't think the twins are going to die in this one, so we'll have to wait and see. But it is a big tug at the heartstrings to end the trailer nonetheless. Overall, they did a fantastic job of giving us a launch trailer that really doesn't feel like we've been spoiled all too much. They stuck with scenes that were really safe to show us and things that only give us kind of glimpses into what the characters are thinking or the way certain scenes might be happening. Emmett's narrations basically are describing what we expect Endwalker's plotline and emotional line to be throughout the entire thing. We get a few ominous quotes from a few different characters, Alphino, the Lady of Light, some of the unknown voices, and mostly just acknowledgement of what is happening right in front of us. While you might feel spoiled by some of the monsters or bosses that are shown, especially some of the scenes that are shown on the moon later and in the throne inside of what is potentially the Gateway of the Gods, I think they did a really good job. I don't feel like I know significantly more than I did before. I do feel a significant amount more excitement. Possibly the most disappointing thing about the launch trailer was that December 7th date, meaning we gotta wait those 2 more weeks, but I think we'll manage. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my analysis of the Endwalker launch trailer. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have plenty more Endwalker content as we get closer, and of course, after it actually releases. Until next time, everyone, take care.